You can't see it. Therefore, you think it doesn't exist. If you could see it, you'd say it exists. But because the senses can't see it, you fail to accept that. Because where the intellect finishes, the soul starts to work. And that's where people need to start going, is to stop intellect, use it with a certain thing called a metaphysical, which the intellect will never grasp. Only the soul can grasp it. And they give us they tell us a good formula. So if you want to know I'm lying, then try it. If I tell you to do something, try it. If you want to refute something, try it first. How do you know if you don't like ketchup? You've never tried ketchup. How do you know you don't like honey if you don't know honey? They say to know something is different from experiencing something. If you don't like honey, and I could tell you it's sweet, you'd be like, okay, sweet. And you're just going to listen to people and just say, yeah, it's sweet. I've just known it's sweet. How do you know China exists? We've been China. Who's been China here? All you know China exists because people have told you it exists, or people have been there and they've seen it. But if you've never been there, you'll be glad. You'll be like, I don't know. Just people have told you. You don't really know it exists. You just know that, yeah, he's gone to China, so I know it exists. And so many thousands of people have told me, I've seen it on TV, I've seen it on TV, I've seen it, do you know what I mean? I've seen it with my eyes on TV, through the camera, I know it exists. So we become people who just use the senses. If we can't see it, we don't know. If we can't hear it, it doesn't exist. And we know it's full well that there's sounds that we can't hear, but dogs can hear. Therefore, does that exist? You can't hear it. But you say that because science proves it, experiment proves it, therefore it must exist. That's why the greatest challenge for the human nowadays is to move out from the physical and try and experience our real essence, which is the soul. That's the greatest message of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. And not just him, all prophets. Jesus, peace and blessings be upon him. Moses, peace and blessings be upon him. Abraham, peace and blessings be upon him. Religion is not an outward manifestation of rules and what to do, do's and don'ts. That's not the purpose of religion. That wasn't the purpose of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. The greatest miracle he had was to revive dead hearts. That's what they tell us. The greatest miracle of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, was people would come to him who would bury their daughters alive. In that generation, at that time, in that civilization, there were people who buried their daughters alive. Think about burying your daughter alive. 2 years old, you bury your daughter alive. This is the civilization that he came in. And then people can come to me and tell me that, you know, me brother, I'm a terrorist. Does someone come and tell me that? And I just don't accept things like that. Why? Because it's not part of religion, neither is it part of any religion, neither is it part of the prophetic way and the light that he comes with. For him, people would bury his daughter, he stopped that. He stopped that practice happening, and it would have still been happening, lest we know, but he stopped things like that. He gave people intellect back. He made them realize what your real purpose in life is, to worship one God, to worship God that gave you sight, that gave you ears, that gave you hearts, that gave you food to eat. Look in the world right now in Somalia, just watching the documentary or advertisement, and it's just, you're looking at a person dying out of hunger, and we're sat here disputing certain things just because we can and we got intellects and etc., and they are dying out of food and things that we just take for granted, i.e. the initiative or the imperative that is upon us as a human being, i.e. the first thing that we need to do is become humans, not become Muslims per se, or Christians per se, or Moses. The first imperative of the human is to become human, is to become someone who is with his primordial state, someone who relates to himself, can feel things, can actually feel the food that he eats. One thing that you need to do is watch something called Food Matters. There's a documentary called Food Matters. I would recommend every single person here to watch that documentary because it takes you back to your essence. And what you eat food, they say 20% of the tomato, that has nutritional value. 80% of it nowadays has no value whatsoever. It can look red in the market, it can look really nice and juicy, it has no value. Because everything's about money. Consumer society, you want to eat more, you want to do more, you want to spend more, you want happiness. and they make you feel like you're never going to be happy. You're never going to reach happiness unless you wear that scarf, or unless you do that thing, or you wear them trainers, or you get that car, or you buy that house, or you become a doctor. You will never reach happiness. You will not reach happiness. And you know, the greatest feeling of liberation is when you take yourself out of that equation and you are a free soul to wander the earth. And you know what? Nothing matters anymore. And you can love who you want, be what you want, and worship God. And you know, when you have that, the knowledge, as my teachers have told me to define it as, is they say knowledge is a light that God descends upon the heart, that gives you expansiveness and makes your heart open up. That is knowledge in Islam. It's not kathratul riwayat, as we're told. It's not learning loads and loads of things, but it's a light that is thrusted into the heart of human beings. Therefore, if you want to know more about the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and the life that he lived, the first thing that we have to do is become human in nature, because he was the greatest human that ever lived according to the Muslims. And for you to know someone that is human, you have to become human first. You have to understand what it means not to eat food. Fast for a day. Fast and understand what it means not to eat food. Then you understand what the prophets, what the companions, even people nowadays, what it feels like not to eat. You tell me you need to understand what it feels like if your 2-year-old daughter was going to be buried by your own hands. If you can't feel nothing, if someone passes away in your family and nothing hurts, 2 days you mourn, mourning for 2 days, 3 days, 1 week, 2 months. After that, it's like, who was he? I forgot about him. If you don't have that sensitivity in your heart to receive knowledge, if you don't have the sensitivity and the capacity to understand what is put in front of you, you'll never understand who the Prophet was. You'll never understand who the Quran or who Jesus was, who Abraham was. You never understand that generation, because we become embedded in the world, and that doesn't allow you to come out of your own self to experience higher realities. That is the essence of who the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, was. He wanted to take every single person from being lowly into being remembered by God Almighty. He made all his companions remembered by God Almighty. He made them humans, he made them rajula, he made them people, men and women who are still remembered 1400 years later. They're still remembered by Allah, they're still remembered by God, they're still remembered by people here. If you take, for instance, anyone from any religion, people were still remembered, but not because they were rich, and not because they did X, Y, Z, or doctors or whatever. People who really understood who God was. And I just give a message to everyone, try it. Maybe people who don't know the Prophet, peace and blessings upon, read a book. There's a good book out there called Martin Lings. He's called Muhammad, his life and times. Go buy it on Amazon. If you don't want to buy it, ask me, I'll buy it for you if you want. I ain't loaded, but you know what I mean, I can do you a favor, a couple of these anyway. If you want to buy it, come to me, I'll get it for you. Read it. Read it and you let me know what you think, and we can have a discussion about it. We can talk about things. There's no, as I said, there's no compulsion in religion. That's what God tells us in the Quran. There's no compulsion in religion. It's something that the intellect has to realize themselves. One of the blameworthy things that we do as Muslims, and I blame myself as well, is you accept things without understanding them really. You don't really understand what's going on. You don't really understand why you believe in God, who the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, really is. You don't really understand it. The greatest thing we can do is question our beliefs, question who we are, question the reality of who I am. What is my soul want? And I'll tell you, the greatest question you need to ask you when you go to sleep, you realize how happy you are and what you think about. The greatest thing that you want is happiness. Question yourself, your reality, question your real essence. Is this what I was created for? Is this who I was created for? Are these reasons the reasons why I'm doing things? Just to do things for the sake of doing things? Do I have a greater purpose in life? There were people like Malcolm X who used to go around America telling people that the white man is the devil. And after so many years, he changed his whole view around, and then he was shot dead and assassinated by his own people. Because he changed who he was. He understood, and the greatest thing that he did, the greatest thing that he challenged himself. And he went to Saudi Arabia, he went to Mecca, he went for Hajj, and he realized that's a totally false understanding that I have, a totally false understanding, because he lived in a bubble. He lived in a bubble in America, and that's all he saw. That's all he was taught. All he was taught was that one thing that he knew. He wasn't taught anything else. He never moved out of his own sphere. But when he moved out, he experienced other people. He experienced other nations, other tribes, other people. And that's what God tells us in the Quran, that we created you in tribes and clans to know one another. I.e., challenge yourself, question your own reality, understand your own soul and what its purpose is. Understand yourself. Don't become dormant. Don't become someone who's it's like sits there and like nothing affects you anymore. These are signs of the walking dead, the living dead. People who don't have no sensitivity to what's happening in the world right now. You don't have sensitivity when people are dying around the world, regardless of any faith, regardless of whether they're Muslims, Christians, whatever faith they are. When people die, a soul dies, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, would stand, and he was, when a corpse and a burial was taking place for a Jewish man, and he stood up out of respect for that person, and he said to his companion, was this not a human being? Was he not a soul? Was he not a human? I.e., was he not someone who lived on this earth just like us? Was he not someone who had a life? Was he not someone who we respect because of the fact that he had a soul that God created? Do we not respect other human beings? These are the pivotal, primordial, human things that we need to instill back in our lives. It needs to move away from just books. It needs to move to people who understand people. That you understand what knowledge is. You understand what people really are and how to become a real human being. Where you really challenge the ideas that you hold. You challenge the environments that you live in. You challenge the systems that govern the way you think. You read books. You become academics. You understand people. That's how you become people who are human, where you understand the environment around you. You understand things. And the greatest person that in my opinion, that I would expect everyone to know regardless of faith, because regardless of faith, as I said, it becomes incumbent upon us to understand, is the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings upon him. So God willing, hopefully, if I'm still alive in 2 weeks' time, I'll be coming and we'll be going through the prophetic biography. And it's something that's important for everyone, especially Muslims, that you understand who the message came through and who the messenger was and how Islam started, what happened and how it came to be, and we understand what happened at the end of the Prophet, peace and blessings in his life. We look at Arabia, we look at the Arab people, we look at the wars that they had, we look at his birth, we look at all these things, and hopefully you have a greater understanding, and this ultimately will benefit to you, because as the Prophet, peace and blessings upon him said, Nusiru bi, the victory is to you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khair, and thanks for listening.